There is a particular kind of silence that settles over a boardroom when the most powerful man in the building has not yet arrived. It is not an empty silence. It is the silence of held breath, of polished shoes pressed flat against marble floors, of assistants refreshing email inboxes every 30 seconds and pretending they are not. That morning, the 42nd floor of Sparks Capital held exactly that silence. The glass walls of the main conference room reflected 14 faces, all arranged around an obsidian table long enough to land a small aircraft on. Water glasses stood untouched. Leather portfolios lay open, pages face down, because no one wanted to be caught reading when Julius Sparks finally walked through the door. At the head of the table, a chair sat empty, high-backed, dark, commanding even when unoccupied, as if the furniture itself had absorbed some portion of the man's authority over the years. 11 minutes past 9. Renata Cole, Julius's chief of staff, stood near the window with her tablet pressed to her chest and her expression arranged into the careful neutrality of someone who knew something she was not yet permitted to say. She had been standing there since 8:53. She had answered 3 questions with, "He's on his way," and one with a smile that communicated absolutely nothing. Across the table, the lead representative from Vantage Holdings, a sharp-faced man named Gerald Rourke, who had flown in from the coast specifically for this meeting, checked his watch for the 5th time and cleared his throat. "Ms. Cole, the preliminary terms we discussed. There are 48 hours before our board requires confirmation. You understand the position this puts?" "I understand completely," Renata said. Her voice was smooth, "and Mr. Sparks understands as well." "Then perhaps someone could reach him. I've already spoken with him this morning." A pause. Rourke straightened his cuffs. And the door at the far end of the room opened. Everyone turned. It was not Julius. It was Marcus Webb, Julius's deputy director of acquisitions, a tall, capable man with the tired eyes of someone who had just received a phone call that rerouted his entire morning. He walked to Renata, leaned close, and said something too quiet for the room to catch. Renata closed her eyes for exactly 1 second. Then she opened them, smoothed her blazer, and turned to face the table. "Gentlemen, ladies, I'm afraid Mr. Sparks will not be joining us this morning." The silence shifted. It became a different kind entirely, the kind with teeth. "Excuse me?" Rourke said. "He sends his sincere apologies and asks that we reschedule for Thursday at the earliest. Marcus will walk you through the revised framework in the interim, and I've already instructed our team to prepare updated term sheets by end of day." She set her tablet down on the table with quiet finality. "I can assure you his decision reflects no change in Sparks Capital's interest in this acquisition. This is a personal matter. A personal matter." O'Rourke repeated it the way people repeat things when they find them unbelievable. "We are talking about a $400 million transaction." "I'm aware of the figure," Renata said evenly. "So is Mr. Sparks." "Then what on earth could possibly? His husband has a prenatal appointment this morning." The room went very quiet. Renata did not flinch. She did not elaborate. She simply picked her tablet back up and gestured for Marcus to take the floor because Julius Sparks had asked her to reschedule his morning, and that was what she was doing. And she had learned a long time ago that when Julius made a decision involving Devon, there was no force on earth. Not $400 million, not Gerald Rourke's incredulous expression. Not the entire Vantage Holdings board that was going to move it. At that precise moment, across the city, Julius Sparks was sitting in a chair designed for waiting. It was a pale blue chair, fabric, slightly too low to the ground for his long legs, so he sat with his knees at an awkward angle and his coat folded over his lap. And he did not appear to notice either of these things, because his attention was entirely elsewhere. Beside him, Devon Fields, Devon Sparks, legally, though he still wrote his professional name as Fields on everything, and Julius had long since accepted this as a battle he was not going to win, sat with a paper cup of water balanced on one knee and a magazine he was not reading open on the other. He was 26 weeks along. It showed in the soft, unmistakable curve beneath his sweater, in the way he shifted slightly to redistribute weight, in the slight flush that sat permanent and pretty in his cheeks these days. He also had not yet noticed that Julius was staring at him. "They called someone ahead of us," Devin said, eyes still on the magazine. "The woman in the green coat. She came in after us. She might have had an earlier appointment that ran late." He turned a page. "You're staring." I'm looking. What?" Julius considered this seriously, the way he considered most things. With the full weight of his attention, unhurried. "The way you hold your cup," he said. "You always tuck your thumb under the rim when you're sitting. You've done it since the first time we had coffee." Devin looked down at his hand. His thumb was, indeed, tucked under the rim of the paper cup. He made a small, dismissive sound that was not quite a laugh, and was not quite annoyance, and was entirely, completely, Devin. "You are a strange man." I know. You canceled the meeting for this." "I rescheduled the meeting," Julius said, "for this." Devin set the magazine aside. He had green eyes, a particular shade that shifted depending on the light, more gray in winter, more gold when the sun caught them, and currently a soft in-between that matched the pale walls of the waiting room almost exactly. He turned those eyes on Julius now with the expression Julius privately thought of as his measuring look, the one Devin used when he was trying to determine whether Julius was being sincere or strategic. Because for a long time early on, those two things had been hard for Devin to tell apart. "Julius. Devin. You didn't have to come. I wanted to. Renata sounded stressed when she called me." "Renata sounds stressed the same way a mountain looks tall," Julius said. "It is simply her natural state and does not indicate crisis." A beat. The corner of Devin's mouth curved, small, reluctant, real. Julius noticed it, the way he noticed everything about Devin, completely, without trying to. "She likes you better when you're predictable." "Most people do." "I don't," Devin said. He said it lightly, like a throwaway line, but his eyes had gone soft, and Julius felt it settle into him the way warm things settle, slowly, thoroughly, from the inside out. "I know," Julius said. "That's why I married you." Devin looked away. He was smiling now, properly, trying not to, and Julius watched the effort of it with something so close to tenderness, it almost embarrassed him, even privately, even here. From the front desk, a nurse appeared in the doorway with a clipboard. "Mr. Fields, we're ready for you." Devin started to push himself up from the low chair. Julius was already standing, already offering his hand. Not making a production of it, not hovering, just, theirs, steady and immediate in the way he was always steady when it mattered. Devin took his hand and stood. And for a moment they were close enough that Julius could smell his shampoo. Something clean and faintly botanical, and Devin looked up at him with an expression that was too private to put into words. "Thank you," Devin said quietly, "not for the hand, for something larger and harder to name." Julius squeezed his fingers once. "Come on," he said, "let's go see our son. To tell the story correctly, you have to go back almost 3 years. Not to the first time they met. That was at a gala, forgettable for both of them in the way that formal events where everyone is performing tend to be forgettable. Julius had been introduced to Devin by a mutual associate who described Devin as the best environmental consultant in the Northeast, which was accurate, and failed to mention that he had an opinion about every single thing and was entirely unafraid to share it, which was perhaps more relevant. They had shaken hands. Devin had been polite. Julius had been civil. Neither of them had thought much of it afterward. The story actually starts 8 months later, in a small conference room on the 17th floor of a building that no longer exists. It was renovated the following year, and the floor plan was completely reconfigured, which Julius sometimes thinks about with a disproportionate sense of loss. Where Julius's company was presenting an urban development proposal to a sustainability review board, and Devin Fields was the board's lead consultant. And Devin Fields had spent 45 minutes dismantling the proposal with the calm, methodical precision of someone who had read every page of it twice and found every flaw. Julius had sat at the head of his team's side of the table and watched Devin work through the structural deficiencies in their environmental impact assessment. And he had felt something strange happen. He had felt interested, not offended, not defensive. Genuinely, alertly interested, the way he got when he encountered something that actually challenged him, which did not happen often enough for his comfort. Devin was thorough. Devin was unintimidated. Devin cited 3 separate pieces of legislation from memory and did not once glance at his notes. And when he looked up and found Julius watching him, he did not look away. "You have a question," Devin said. It was not quite an invitation and not quite a challenge. It was simply an observation. "Several," Julius said, "but they can wait until you're finished." Something shifted in Devin's expression. Brief, interesting. "All right," he said, and went back to his notes. They had gone 4 rounds on the proposal over the following 3 weeks. Devin rejected the first revision, accepted the second with significant modifications, flagged concerns on the third that Julius's team honestly hadn't caught, and signed off on the fourth with something he probably thought was professional restraint, and Julius privately identified as reluctant satisfaction. During the third meeting, standing over a set of blueprints spread across a table, their arms had nearly touched, and Julius had become aware of Devin in a way that had nothing to do with environmental assessments. The warmth of him, the focus, the fact that when Devin leaned over the blueprints he pushed his sleeves up to his elbows, and Julius found this profoundly distracting and could not have explained why to anyone's satisfaction, including his own. He hadn't said anything. He was not a man who said things before he had decided to say them. After the fourth meeting concluded and the proposal was approved, Julius had walked Devin to the elevator. They had stood there, coats on, the building quiet around them at 6:30 in the evening, and Julius had said, without particular preamble, "Would you like to have dinner?" Not a question. Julius often phrased things as statements when he already knew the answer he wanted. It was a habit Devin would later spend considerable energy trying to reform, with moderate success. Devin had looked at him for a long moment. "Is this professional or personal?" "Personal," Julius said, because he was also not a man who was imprecise when he could be precise. Another pause. Devin had the kind of face that showed thought. Not nervousness, not calculation, actual thought, as if he were genuinely consulting his own internal sense of what he wanted before committing to an answer. Julius had found this already remarkable. Most people he knew had learned to mask that process entirely. "All right," Devin said, "but somewhere without a dress code. I've been in a tie since 7 this morning." "I know a place," Julius said. He did. It was a small Italian restaurant 6 blocks from the office. No tablecloths, mismatched chairs, the kind of wine list printed on a chalkboard that gets erased and rewritten every week. Julius had eaten there probably 40 times in his adult life, and never brought anyone there because it was without his ever consciously deciding this his place. A place he went when he wanted to not be Julius Sparps, the chief executive, and simply be Julius who liked good pasta and sometimes wanted to sit in a corner and think quietly. He brought Devin Fields there on their first date. He has thought about this since then, about what it meant that he chose that place without hesitation, and he thinks it probably meant everything. They had sat across from each other for 3 hours. The food was good, the wine was better. Devin had talked about his work. Not performing it, not pitching it, just talking about it, the way people talk about things they actually care about, with specific details and genuine frustration and the occasional digression. And Julius had listened with the full weight of his attention, which was the only way he knew how to listen. And somewhere around the second glass of wine, Devin had noticed this and gone slightly quiet. "You're doing it again," Devin said. "Doing what?" "Watching me like you're taking notes." "I'm listening," Julius said. "It's very." Devin stopped. Seemed to recalibrate. Most people are waiting for their turn to talk. I'm not, I noticed. A beat. It's a little unnerving. I can stop. "Don't," Devin said, and then seemed mildly surprised at himself for saying it. He reached for his wine. Julius did not smile, because smiling at Devon when Devon was already slightly off balance seemed unkind, but he felt it. That small internal warmth that had no clean name. They had ended the night on a sidewalk, Devon's coat buttoned against the autumn cold, their breath visible in the air between them. Julius had said, again with minimal preamble, "I'd like to do this again." Devon had looked at him. "Yeah," he said finally, "me too." That was where it started. They were cautious. Devon was cautious the way someone is cautious when they have learned, specifically and personally, that opening quickly leads to being hurt. He had not said this, not for months, but Julius read it in the careful spaces Devon left between them, in the way Devon waited for Julius to act before he matched it. In the way he sometimes went a little still when Julius was unexpectedly gentle, as if gentleness required a moment of adjustment. Julius was cautious, the way someone is cautious when they are used to being wanted for what they represent rather than who they are, and have mostly accepted this as the condition of being Julius Sparks, and have then encountered a person who seems entirely unimpressed by the name, and is apparently going to require the actual human being underneath it, and find this requirement both frightening and the most alive they have felt in years. So they were careful with each other. They went slowly. They had dinner twice a week, then 3 times. They walked in a park near Devon's apartment on Sunday mornings, because Devon liked the park, and Julius liked watching Devon be somewhere he liked. They argued about things, genuinely argued, because Devon had strong opinions, and Julius had equally strong opinions that were frequently incompatible with Devon's, and neither of them backed down from a position without being convinced, which meant that some evenings ended in the particular tension of 2 people who respected each other too much to capitulate and needed to sleep on it, and they made their way back from those arguments always, because something between them was stronger than being right. The first time Julius touched Devon's face, they had been standing in Devon's kitchen after a dinner that Devon had cooked. Not well. Devon was not a natural cook, but with great concentration and a level of determination that Julius found affecting, and they had been laughing about something Julius could not now remember what, and Devon had had a small smear of tomato sauce near his jaw, and Julius had reached out and wiped it away with his thumb without thinking. The laughter stopped. Devon looked up at him. Julius's thumb was still at the edge of his jaw, and he became suddenly and completely aware of the smallness of the distance between them, of the warmth of Devon's skin, of the way Devon was looking at him, not startled, not pulling back, just looking with those gray-green eyes that showed everything he was thinking. "Julius," Devon said, very quietly. "Yes, if you're going to—" He stopped. "I am," Julius said. He kissed him. Gently, first, an offer more than a claim, and then Devon made a soft sound and kissed him back, and it was nothing like the carefully maintained distance of the past weeks, nothing like caution or calibration. It was just Devon's hand coming up to Julius's collar, and Devon leaning into him, and Julius thinking with the clarity that sometimes comes in moments of great significance, "There you are." As if Devon had been somewhere else all this time and had only just arrived. They stood in that kitchen for a long time. Later, sitting on Devon's couch with Devon's head against his shoulder and the city humming outside the windows, Julius said quietly, "I'm not good at," and stopped. Because he was not a man who struggled to finish sentences, and the struggling itself was information. Devon waited. "I don't do this well," Julius said. "The being known. I do better with distance." "I noticed," Devon said, not unkindly. "I'm telling you because I don't want to do it badly without warning you." Devon was quiet for a moment. "Can I tell you something?" "Yes." "Distance is what I'm afraid of," Devon said, not in the way you'd expect. "I'm not afraid of you leaving. I've managed that before. I'm afraid of someone staying but keeping enough distance that I never actually reach them." A pause. "That's the version that really gets to me." Julius said nothing for a moment. He was processing this, not filing it away, not strategizing around it, genuinely absorbing it, the weight and shape of it. "Then I'll stay and be reachable," he said, "even when I'm bad at it." Devon turned his head to look up at him. Something in his face had gone open, unguarded in a way Julius rarely saw and was already learning to recognize as significant. "Okay," Devon said. That was the second time it started. Nothing about the difficult part happened suddenly. It grew slowly, the way most difficult things do, not as a crisis, but as a steady accumulation of small costs. Julius's work was the thing. It had always been the thing. Sparks Capital was not just a company he ran. It was in some deep and stubborn way the structure around which he had organized his entire sense of purpose, and dismantling any part of that structure required the kind of deliberate effort that did not come naturally to him. Devon was patient. He was patient in a specific, clear-eyed way, not passive, not resigned, but genuinely willing to give Julius the time to learn something. He did not complain about canceled dinners without lodging the complaint first, clearly, once. He did not sulk about the nights Julius was still at his desk at 11. He simply, after the third or fourth time something was missed, sat across from Julius with a cup of tea and said, "I need to know if I'm fitting around your life or into it, because those feel different." Julius had sat with that for a long time. "Into it," he said finally. "Then some things have to change." Not a demand, an observation. Devon was extraordinary at making necessary things sound simply true. They negotiated. That was the right word. Not fought, not struggled, negotiated, with the same thorough attention they had once applied to environmental impact assessments. What Julius would protect, what he would give, what Devon needed and what Devon could manage without. It was not romantic exactly, except that it entirely was. Because the willingness to sit across from someone and say, "Here is what I need and here is what I can offer," and then listen to what came back. That was perhaps the most intimate thing Julius had ever done. He was not perfect at it. He failed several times in the year that followed. Got pulled back into the undertow of work, missed things that mattered. Came home late to Devon already asleep, and lay awake feeling the specific weight of having disappointed someone who trusted him not to. He learned to say sorry without qualification. He learned to come home. He learned that there was a version of himself that Devon saw clearly, not the abbreviated polished version Julius showed the world, but something more fundamental, and that being seen that way required in return the willingness to actually be there to be seen. There was one night, 14 months in early spring, the apartment quiet after an argument that had not fully resolved, when Devon sat on the edge of the bed with his back to Julius and said very low, "I wonder sometimes if you're going to decide it's easier without me." Julius had gone still. "Why?" "Because I'm not easy. I ask things. I want things. I take up room. Devon. I just want to. Look at me." A pause. Devon turned. His eyes were tired and honest and a little afraid, which was a rare thing for Devon's eyes to be. Julius crossed to him and crouched down so they were at the same level, so Devon was not looking up at him because some conversations required being eye to eye. "I don't want easy," Julius said. "I spent 41 years having easy. Easy is a long room with nothing in it." He held Devon's gaze. "You are the most consequential thing in my life. That is not a burden. That is the whole point." Devon stared at him. His jaw was tight in the way it went tight when he was trying not to show that something had reached him. "Julius," he said. His voice had gone quiet. "Rough at the edges." "I know," Julius said. He reached up and put his hand against Devon's cheek, the way he had in that kitchen months ago. "I know." Devon closed his eyes and leaned into his hand, and Julius stayed there, crouched on the floor in the half-dark, until Devon's breathing evened out and the tension left his shoulders. And he thought about how extraordinary it was, how genuinely, purely extraordinary, to love someone, to have chosen someone and been chosen back, to have made, out of two stubborn and complicated and imperfect people, uses that held. He asked Devon to marry him 6 weeks later, not at a restaurant, not with a grand gesture. In their kitchen, the same kitchen where everything had started, where Julius had wiped tomato sauce from his jaw and everything had changed. on an ordinary Saturday morning, with coffee going and Devon in yesterday's sweatshirt and the light coming in sideways through the window. Julius had simply said, "Marry me," and Devon had turned from the counter with his mug halfway to his mouth and stared at him for a long, suspended second. "Now?" Devon said. "The question is now," Julius said. "The event can be whenever you want." Julius, "Yes, yes." Devon set down his mug. He walked across the kitchen. He took Julius's face in both hands. His hands were warm from the mug, and looked at him with the open, unguarded expression that Julius had been cataloging since their first dinner and still found devastating. "Yes," Devon said. "Obviously yes. You absolute yes." Julius put his arms around him and held on and outside the window. The city went about its Saturday morning completely indifferent to the fact that something was being made permanent, and that was fine. Because it was not the city's business, it was theirs. Back in the present, in a room with pale walls and blue chairs, the appointment lasted 40 minutes. Julius sat in the corner while the technician worked, and Devon lay on the narrow bed with his sweater pushed up, watching the screen with an expression that was somewhere between wonder and something he could not quite name, something that happened to his face every time Julius had noticed every single time, as if the fact of it refused to become ordinary no matter how many times he encountered it. "He's measuring well," the technician said. She moved the wand and the image shifted, resolving into something that had a head, a spine, small limbs in motion. "Very active today. He was up at 3, Devon said. "I noticed." Julius looked at the screen. Something happened in his chest. A compression, brief and complete, like a fist closing around his heart and then releasing. He had felt it at every appointment. He did not think he was going to stop feeling it. "Do you want to hear the heartbeat?" the technician asked. "Yes," Devon said, before Julius could answer. And then the sound came, rapid, rhythmic, impossibly small and impossibly real, and Devon's hand came off the bed and found Julius's, and Julius held it, and they listened. Afterward, in the elevator going down, Devon stood beside Julius with his shoulder touching Julius's arm and said, "You didn't have to cancel for this. Reschedule then." A pause. The elevator was mirrored, and Julius could see Devon's face in profile, the slight furrow between his brows that meant he was working something out. The Vantage deal. That's been 6 months of groundwork. It'll keep. Julius. Devon. Julius turned to face him. In the mirror, the same gesture appeared doubled. 2 men in a silver box, close and serious. "I've been present for every acquisition Sparks Capital has ever made. I have been in every room, for every meeting, every negotiation, every closing. Everyone." He held Devon's eyes. "I am not going to look back in 20 years and remember being in a boardroom on this particular morning." Devon was quiet. "I am going to remember being in that room," Julius said when he moved, "and you reached for my hand." The elevator opened at the lobby. Neither of them moved for a moment. "Sometimes," Devon said very quietly, "you say things that I don't know what to do with." "You don't have to do anything with them," Julius said. "They're just true." Devon exhaled. He looked away, then back. Then, he took Julius's arm with both hands, threading his fingers through Julius's elbow in the particular way he did when he wanted to be close but wasn't going to announce it, and they walked out of the lobby into the late morning light. Their apartment was on the north side of the city, high enough for a view, but not the kind of high where the ground disappears and you forget you live in a place where people walk around. Julius had chosen it for this, though he had not told Devon this was the reason. He had said the light was good, but that was not the reason. The reason was that Devon liked to be able to see the street. He liked to stand at the window with coffee and watch the neighborhood in the mornings, not with longing, not with restlessness, but with the same attentive curiosity he brought to most things. Julius had known this about him before they moved in together, had paid attention to it, and had chosen a home accordingly. This was how Julius loved people. Quietly, specifically, with a great deal of prior observation. He was not a man for grand speeches or elaborate surprises, or rather, the grand gestures he was capable of, tended to be invisible, structural, the kind that required someone to know him well enough to see them. Devon, over the years, had learned to see them. "You picked this apartment because of the windows," Devon had said, about 4 months after they moved in, setting his coffee cup on the sill and looking at Julius with that measuring expression. The light is good, yes," you said." He tilted his head. "You picked it for the windows." Julius had looked at him, said nothing. Devon had stopped, his throat moved. "Julius, do you like it?" "I love it," Devon said. "I love it, and I know you knew I would, and I don't know what to do with you." "You keep saying that, because it keeps being true." That was the thing about them, Julius thought sometimes, about the specific shape of what they had built. It was made of language and silence in equal parts. It was made of Devon's directness and Julius's precision of the way they argued until they were convinced, rather than exhausted, of the ways they had each, over time, changed for the better in directions they had not known they needed to change. Julius had learned to come home. Devon had learned, slowly, with effort, earning it in increments, to trust that home would be there. The baby had been a conversation, not a surprise. They had talked about it seriously for almost a year before deciding. Devon had wanted to understand what it would mean for his work. He was mid-project on a significant environmental consulting contract, and pausing it required real planning. Julius had wanted to understand what it would mean for Devon's body, the specific medical reality of an Omega pregnancy, the weight of it, the needs of it, whether their life as it was configured could support what Devon's body and Devon's self would require. They had made lists, spreadsheets which Devon had called, aggressively, Julius of you, and then quietly added 4 rows to. They had talked to their doctor and to friends who had done this, and to each other, late at night, in the dark, with the honesty that comes only in darkness and in long familiarity. "I want this," Devon had said one night, not tentatively, clearly the way he said most things. "I know," Julius said. "Do you?" "I've wanted it since approximately month 3 of knowing you." Devon had turned to look at him in the dark. "Why didn't you say?" "Because it wasn't my decision to make alone, and you weren't ready to make it together yet." A long pause. "How do you do that?" Devon said. "Do what?" "Wait for the right moment, for the other person to catch up. Most people just push." "Most things worth having require patience," Julius said. "You're ridiculous," Devon said softly. And yet, Devon agreed. He had moved closer in the dark, and Julius had put his arm around him, and they had lain there in the particular quiet of a decision being made, not announced, not formalized, just settled. The way real decisions sometimes settle before they are ever spoken aloud. The second trimester had been, all things considered, extraordinary. The first trimester had been difficult. Devon did not complain readily. It was not his nature, but Julius had learned to read the specific set of his jaw the moments in the evening when Devon went quiet and sat very still. The way he held himself differently than usual. Julius had adapted without announcement, altered schedules, managed the mornings differently, learned what helped and what didn't, and stopped doing what didn't and did more of what did. "You researched this," Devon had said one morning, watching Julius make the particular combination of ginger tea and dry toast that had emerged as the most effective. "Yes. How much?" "Enough to understand what you're experiencing," Julius said, "and what might help." Devon had looked at him for a moment with an expression Julius recognized, moved, but reluctant to show it, the old habit. Then he had taken the tea and said very quietly, "Thank you." By the second trimester, things had shifted. The difficulty receded. Devon's energy came back. Not all at once, but steadily, incrementally, the way daylight returns in early spring. He went back to consulting work, part-time, on his own schedule. He started the particular project of turning the spare room into something, which involved a great deal of deliberate consideration of paint colors and a heated 3-day debate about furniture that Julius had eventually conceded because Devon was right and also because Devon, when passionate about something, was genuinely wonderful to watch. Julius had started going to every appointment. Not because Devon asked. Devon had in the beginning specifically said Julius did not need to rearrange his entire life, to which Julius had listened carefully and then arranged his life as he saw fit, which was what he generally did when he was certain of the right answer. But because each appointment was something that happened to Devon, and Julius did not want to be elsewhere when things happened to Devon if he could prevent it. There were 26 weeks in now, 14 to go, roughly. The room was painted, a soft, particular green that Devon had chosen by holding paint chips up to the window light for an entire afternoon until he found the one that did something specific in the afternoon sun. The crib was assembled. The books were on the shelf. The small things that would belong to a small person were accumulating in drawers and on surfaces with the quiet insistence of impending reality. Julius stood in the doorway of that room sometimes, in the evenings, and felt something that had no adequate name. It was not fear exactly, though it contained fear the way large things contain smaller things. It was something that felt like the eve of something, the standing on the edge feeling, the before, the last ordinary moments of a life that was about to reorganize itself entirely around something new. He mentioned this to Devon one evening, standing in the doorway of the green room. Devon came to stand beside him, their shoulders touching. He looked at the room. "Scared?" he said. "Cautious," Julius said. "There's a difference." "What's the difference?" "Fear stops you. Caution is respect for what you're doing." Devon was quiet for a moment. "I'm scared," he said. "Not the cautious kind, the real kind." He said it simply, without apology. "I'm scared of being someone's parent and not knowing how, of the first few months, of not understanding what he needs." A pause. "Of not being enough." Julius turned to look at him. Devon was still looking at the room, jaw slightly set, honest in the way he was always honest when it cost him something. "You are already," Julius said, "more than enough. You have been more than enough since before he existed." Devon glanced at him. Something in his face shifted. "You are going to be extraordinary," Julius said. "Not because it's easy, because you never do things halfway, and you love with everything you have, and he's going to know that every single day." Devon's throat moved. He looked back at the room. "You're going to make me cry in the nursery. That seems like an appropriate place for it." A short, broken laugh. Devon pressed the back of his hand briefly to his mouth, then dropped it. "Julius." "Yes." He didn't say anything else. He put his arm around Julius's waist from the side, and Julius put his arm around Devon's shoulders, and they stood in the doorway of the green room together in the quiet of the evening. And it was enough, more than enough, to simply be there in the before together. They had lunch after the appointment at a small place near the clinic, the kind with good sandwiches and sunlight through the front windows, and no pretension whatsoever, which Devon preferred and Julius had come to genuinely enjoy. By noon, Julius's phone had accumulated 11 messages. He turned it face down. Devon raised an eyebrow. "You can check it. I'm having lunch with you." "Julius, if the Vantage deal is..." "Marcus has it," Julius said. "The term sheets will be ready by 3. Rourke will be unhappy for approximately 48 hours, and then will accept the Thursday meeting because they want this deal and they know it." He picked up his coffee. "This is not a crisis. It is a negotiation." Devon looked at him steadily. "And if it falls through because you weren't there this morning?" "Then it falls through," Julius said with complete calm, "and I'll do the next one." "That's..." Devon stopped. "What? Very easy for you to say." "Is it?" Julius set down the coffee. He was looking at Devon with the full weight of his attention, the way he always looked when something mattered. "It is a $400 million transaction. It represents 6 months of work by a significant portion of my team. The implications of it, if successful, are substantial." "So why?" "Because in 10 years, when I think about this morning, I am not going to remember what Gerald Rourke said about term sheets," Julius said. "I am going to remember sitting in a blue chair next to you and hearing a heartbeat." He paused. "And that's without the question of what you needed this morning, which is not secondary to any of this. It is, in fact, the whole point." Devon was quiet. His coffee cup was between his hands, and he was looking at Julius with an expression that was very still and very serious. "What did I need this morning?" he said, not rhetorically, actually asking. Julius considered the question, because it deserved consideration. "To not be alone at an appointment that matters," he said, "to have me there when they played the heartbeat." He paused. "And possibly to know, again, though I am happy to keep demonstrating it, that you are not a footnote to my life." The stillness in Devon's expression broke. Something came through it, not tears exactly, but their near neighbor, something that lived in the same country. "You're going to have to stop doing that," Devon said. "Doing what?" "Saying exactly the right thing. It's been 3 years, and it hasn't gotten any easier." "I'm not trying to say the right thing," Julius said. "I'm saying what's true." "Same problem," Devon said softly. They sat with that for a moment in the sunlit room over coffee they weren't particularly drinking anymore. "How's your sandwich?" Julius said finally. Devon looked down at it. He had eaten approximately a third of it. "Good. How's yours?" "Good." A beat of ordinary quiet. Then Devon reached across the table and took Julius's hand. Casual, easy, the way people touch each other when they have been touching each other for years, and it is simply the language they speak. "Thank you for this morning," he said. Just that. Julius turned his hand over and held Devon's. "Thank you for letting me be there," he said. Outside the window, the city went on at its usual insistent pace, entirely unconcerned with them. This was fine. What mattered was happening here, in the small warm pocket of this window table, over sandwiches and bad coffee, and words that didn't need to be large because the things they were describing were already enormous. 3 weeks after that morning, there was a night that neither of them would forget. It came without warning, the way the things that really matter often do, tucked inside an ordinary Thursday, given no special introduction. Devon had been quieter than usual since the afternoon. Not in a worrying way. Julius had learned to distinguish the different kinds of Devon's quietness, the productive kind, where he was working through something internally, the tired kind, the content kind, and the rare, particular kind that meant something was sitting with him that he hadn't yet decided how to say. That evening, it was the last kind, and Julius, who had learned to give Devon space in the same way he had learned everything else about Devon, by paying close attention, had left it alone. They had cooked dinner together, which was one of the rituals of their evenings, not always, but often, particularly on the nights when neither of them had outside demands, when the apartment was theirs entirely. Julius cooked well. Devon cooked with conviction, if not always with accuracy, and between the two of them, they generally arrived at something good. That evening, Devon had stood at the counter, chopping herbs with the focused quiet of someone whose hands were busy and whose mind was elsewhere, and Julius had let it be. And they had eaten and cleaned up and moved to the couch in the wordless, comfortable way of two people who have been together long enough that they don't need to narrate every transition. Devon was reading. Or ostensibly reading. Julius could tell from across the couch that the page had not turned in some time. Eventually, Devon set the book down and sat with it closed in his lap, looking toward the window. The city outside was doing its evening thing. Lights, movement, the ambient hum of other lives. "I'm 32, Devon said. Julius waited. "I spent—" A pause. He was choosing the words carefully, which meant they were important. "I spent a long time not wanting any of this, or telling myself I didn't, because it felt like wanting things that were too." He stopped again. "I thought wanting a home, and wanting someone, and wanting this." A gesture toward his middle, small, encompassing. "I thought it was naive, like wanting it was some kind of admission that I wasn't self-sufficient enough." Julius was still, listening in the complete way. "And now I'm 32, and I have it," Devon said. "And I can't. I don't know how to sit inside how grateful I am without it feeling. I don't know. Unbearable, like it's too much to hold. Silence. Not an empty one. Like if you named it, it might become fragile," Julius said. Devon looked at him. "Yes," he said, "exactly that." Julius was quiet for a moment. Then he moved. Across the couch, close enough to put his arm around Devon, which he did, pulling him in against his side. Devon came without resistance, his head finding its place against Julius's shoulder in the way it always did, with the ease of long practice. "It won't become fragile because you name it," Julius said into his hair. "Things don't work that way. How do they work?" "The things you name," Julius said, "you take care of. The things you can't name, those are the ones that slip away." Devon was quiet against him. Julius felt the slow, measured rhythm of his breathing, and the warmth of him, and the particular weight of him leaning in, the specific, irreplaceable weight of Devon trusting him enough to lean. "I'm happy," Devon said. The simplest sentence. The hardest one. "I know," Julius said. "Are you?" Julius did not answer immediately. Not because the answer was complicated, but because it deserved the same care Devon had given the question. "I have spent the majority of my life," Julius said, "building things, companies, deals, structures of various kinds, and they were satisfying in the way that building things is satisfying. You can see them, you can measure them." He paused. "But I was 41 years old, and I had never once, in my life, felt like I was in the right place." Devon was still. "And then there was a man with a sustainable development proposal and a complete inability to be impressed by me," Julius said, "and I felt located for the first time." He looked down at Devon. "You located me. You are where I am supposed to be. So yes, I am happy. A beat. I have been happy since approximately our third dinner." Devon lifted his head from Julius's shoulder to look at him. His eyes were bright. He was not going to cry. He was constitutionally resistant to crying in company, but he was very close to the edge of something. "Third dinner," he said. "The one where you got into an argument with me about urban green space allocation and said, and I quote, your entire framework is built on a fundamental misunderstanding of how ecosystems function in developed areas." And I thought, "There he is." Devon stared at him. Then, despite himself, he laughed. A real one, unguarded, the kind that changed his whole face. "I was right, by the way." "You were," Julius said. "I updated the proposal accordingly." "I know you did. I almost liked you for it." "Almost. It was early days." Julius smiled. It happened the way it always happened with Devon, without being summoned, without being performed, just there, because Devon made room for it. "Early days," he agreed. Devon settled back against him, and Julius rested his cheek against the top of Devon's head, and outside the city did what cities do in the dark, and inside the apartment on the north side, with the good windows, two people sat together in the specific luminous quiet of being exactly where they were supposed to be. Julius kept a notebook. Devon had discovered this in year 2. Not by snooping. Julius left it on the kitchen counter sometimes, which Devon eventually understood was not carelessness, but a form of offering, of saying, "Here, this exists. I'm not hiding it," and had asked about it. "It's just thinking," Julius had said. "You write your thinking down. It's clearer that way." "Can I?" Devon had stopped himself. "Read it?" A pause. "You'd say if you didn't want me to." "I'd say," Julius confirmed. Devon had picked it up. He had read 3 pages while Julius stood at the counter and made no indication of watching him. Then Devon had set it back down very carefully, as if it were something he was returning to, exactly where he found it, and said in a voice that had gone quiet, "You wrote about the day I signed off on the environmental assessment." "Yes. You wrote that you'd—" He stopped. "You wrote that you went back to your office and sat there for a while." "I did." "Why?" Julius had looked at him across the kitchen. "Because I just watched you spend 3 weeks being completely indifferent to what I represented," he said, "and I needed a moment to sit with how significant that was." Devon had said nothing for a moment. Then, "Julius, that was before we ever had dinner." "Yes. You'd already?" "I knew what I knew," Julius said simply. It was not the last time Devon found himself undone by the specificity of how Julius paid attention. But it was one of the earlier times, and in some ways, the most surprising, because Devon had not yet fully understood, had not yet truly believed, that a person could look at him and see him and decide, based on the seeing, to move toward him. He understood it better now. 3 years in, at 29 weeks along, lying in bed in the early morning while Julius slept with his hand resting on Devon's side, a habit he had developed in the second trimester, apparently entirely unconsciously. Reaching for Devon in sleep as naturally as breathing. Devon lay on his back and thought about the way a life accumulates, not in the dramatic moments, or not only there, but in the long stretches between, in the mornings and the kitchens and the arguments that got resolved, and the appointments in blue chairs, and the dinners cooked imperfectly, and the notebooks left on counters as quiet invitations. He thought about the man sleeping beside him, the particular sound of his breathing, the line of his shoulder against the pale morning light, the fact that Julius Sparks, who could have done anything and gone anywhere and been unmoved by most of it, had gone to a small Italian restaurant and told an honest story and listened, actually listened, and come back and kept coming back and rescheduled a $400 million meeting because his husband had a prenatal appointment. Devon put his own hand over Julius's, where it rested on his side. Under their hands, a small movement. Interior, unmistakable. A flutter, a push, the particular insistent language of a person who did not yet have words. Devon exhaled. His eyes went warm. "Good morning," he said, very quietly, to no one and everyone. Beside him, Julius stirred, turned his head, not yet fully awake, and his hand pressed a little more deliberately where it rested. "What time is it?" Julius said. Not a question exactly, the morning voice, loose at the edges. "Early," Devon said. "Is he moving?" "Yeah." Julius opened his eyes. In the soft, gray blue of the early light, he looked at Devon with an expression that was unguarded the way he only was in the mornings, before the day assembled itself around him. Open, quiet, entirely present. "Good morning," Julius said. "Good morning," Devon said back. They lay there in the early light, the city still mostly asleep outside the good windows, two hands over one small and insistent life, and the morning gathered around them gently, without hurry, the way good things do. Thursday came. Julius was in the boardroom. He sat at the head of the obsidian table and listened to Gerald Rourke restart the conversation with the particular energy of a man who has spent 48 hours being professionally offended and has now decided, in his own interests, to set it aside. The term sheets had been revised. Marcus and the team had done excellent work. The framework was clean. The numbers made sense for both sides. The meeting ran 3 hours. It was a good meeting. By the end, the broad strokes were aligned and a formal offer timeline had been established, and Rourke shook Julius's hand with the firm grip of a man who had reassessed his assessment. "Your team held this together admirably," Rourke said, "in your absence." "They're an exceptional team," Julius said. A pause. Rourke seemed to consider something. He was a practical man, ultimately, which was why this deal had gotten this far. "My assistant told me what Ms. Cole said," he offered, "about the appointment." "Yes," Julius said. "I have 3 children," Rourke said. This was, apparently, everything he intended to say about it. "Then you understand," Julius said. Rourke's expression shifted, something behind the professional surface, brief but real. "I do," he said. He picked up his coat. "Thursday worked fine, as it turns out. My schedule had more room than I thought." After everyone had gone, Julius sat alone at the long table for a few minutes. The city was visible through the high windows, clear today, light on glass and steel, the particular energy of a city in motion. He checked his phone. A message from Devon. "How was it?" He typed back. "Done. Your fault." The reply came quickly. "My fault." Our work complimented the team. "The deal is moving forward. I was not needed." A pause. "Then, you were needed elsewhere." Julius looked at the message for a moment. Then he put his phone in his pocket, stood up, and went to tell Renata the meeting had concluded. The weeks had a specific quality now, weighted, expectant, the days arranged around the countdown the way rooms arrange themselves around a hearth. Devon had slowed, not unwillingly. The consulting work had wound down to occasional calls and advisory emails. He spent more time in the apartment, moving through it with the unhurried purposefulness of someone nesting, though he would have objected vigorously to that word. The green room received final touches. The small, important preparations continued. Julius reorganized his schedule, not for the first time, and more thoroughly than before. He identified everything that could be delegated and delegated it. He restructured his daily calendar to be present in the mornings and home by evening, with very few exceptions, and the exceptions required Devon's pre-approval, which Devon gave or declined based on actual need rather than principle, which was how Julius had known he would. In the evenings, they read, they talked, they watched films that Devon chose, because Julius's taste in films was, Devon had established early in their relationship, technically competent and emotionally evacuated, which was fair. They cooked together and ate together and went to bed at reasonable hours, and in the nights Julius would find himself awake sometimes, not anxious, just aware, in the particular way of being on the edge of something enormous. He told Devon this one night. "What does it feel like?" Devon asked. "Like standing at an open door," Julius said, "in the dark, not knowing the room. Scary?" "Interesting," Julius said. "Doors are interesting." Devon laughed a little. "You would find a door to an unknown room interesting, wouldn't you?" "I'd be interested and terrified. Those aren't mutually exclusive." "No," Devon agreed. He shifted, resettling, adjusting for the current configuration of his body with the pragmatic acceptance he developed. "I dream about him," he said. I don't know his face or anything, just the sense of him, being there." "What's the sense?" Devon was quiet, considering. "Like something I already know," he said finally. "Does that make sense? In the dream it's like meeting someone you've already been told about by someone who loves them. Like you already feel warmly toward them before they've said a word." Julius listened to this and felt the compression in his chest again, the fist, the release. "That makes perfect sense," he said. "It doesn't scare you? That feeling of knowing you already love something completely before it's even real yet?" "It's already real," Julius said. Devon turned to look at him. "He's already real," Julius said. "He's been real since the first time I saw a heartbeat on a screen." A pause. "The love isn't premature, it's just finally in the same room as what it's for." Devon was very still. "Julius," he said softly. "I know. You." He stopped, breathed. "You make it so, I spend so much time trying to be self-contained and reasonable, and you just say things like that and I don't know what to do with myself." "You're not supposed to be self-contained with me," Julius said. "That's the whole arrangement." "I know," Devon said. "I know that, I do." A pause. "Sometimes I still forget it's allowed." This was one of the true things about Devon, this particular fault line in him, this old learned smallness that sat underneath all the directness and competence. He had been teaching himself, for 3 years, that it was allowed to be this large inside someone else's life. Julius had been patient about the teaching, because patience was the right tool, and because he understood the lesson. He had had his own version of it to learn. "It's allowed," Julius said. "It has always been allowed. It will keep being allowed." Devon was quiet for a moment. Then he reached out and took Julius's hand where it lay between them and held it, firmly, with both of his, in the way he held things he wanted to make sure stayed. "Thank you," Devon said. The word was small and contained everything. "Always," Julius said, which was also small and also contained everything. Outside, the city moved through its late-night rhythms, indifferent and eternal, and inside 2 people lay in the dark and held on. And in some weeks' time, the room at the end of the hall would have someone new in it, and nothing would be the same, and everything would be better, and they both knew it and were. Each in their own way entirely ready. The sun came through the windows of the hospital room in a way that was unremarkable and completely extraordinary. Devon was asleep. He had been asleep for the better part of 2 hours. Deep, bone-level sleep, the sleep of someone who had done an enormous amount of work and was not yet ready to rejoin the world. Julius had not moved from the chair beside the bed. In his arms, a small person was sleeping also. He was very small. He had Devon's nose, or what Julius thought would become Devon's nose, eventually, given time, and Julius's hands, apparently, which the nurse had remarked upon with a smile while Julius was still too stunned to process commentary. He was wrapped in the particular efficient manner of hospital nursing staff, which Julius had already decided he would need to learn, and his face in sleep had the concentrated peacefulness of someone who had no problems whatsoever. Which Julius thought was very nearly accurate. His name was Oliver. They had agreed on it months ago. One of the rare naming discussions that had concluded without significant debate, both of them arriving at it from different directions and finding it waiting there. Julius held Oliver and looked at Devon sleeping and thought about everything, all of it. The Italian restaurant and the first dinner, and the kitchen and the blueprint table and the apartment with the good windows and the green room and the blue chairs and the heartbeat and the 3 years of negotiation and trust and change and growth and love, which was not a word Julius used loosely, and which had nonetheless become the most essential one. And he thought about how he had been a man who built structures, who measured outcomes, who organized his life around legible returns on investment, and how none of that was adequate language for what he was holding in his arms. Oliver made a small sound. Not distress, just existing, briefly announcing the fact of himself. "I know," Julius said quietly. "I'm here." Across the bed, Devon shifted. His eyes opened, slowly, blinking against the light, then focusing on Julius with the dazed, searching expression of someone newly awake who is locating the most important thing in the room. "Hey," Devon said. His voice was rough and soft at once. "Hey," Julius said. Devon looked at Oliver. His expression did something Julius had no words for. It moved through several things at once and settled into something that was probably the closest Devon feels would ever come to being completely unmade by happiness. "Hi," Devon said. To Oliver, very gently. "Hi, you." Oliver, eyes still closed, made another small sound. "He's very opinionated already," Julius said. "Of course he is," Devon said. "Look who his fathers are." He pushed himself carefully to sitting, and Julius rose and brought Oliver to him, transferred him with the careful deliberateness of someone handling the most significant thing they have ever held. Which was accurate. And Devon took him and settled him against his chest and went quiet in the way that was not any of the kinds of quiet Julius had catalogued, because it was a new kind, one that had never existed before this morning. Julius sat on the edge of the bed. He put his arm around Devon, who leaned into it automatically, instinctively, in the way that had been practiced until it was simply the language of them. They looked at Oliver. Oliver existed with great commitment to the task. "Rourke's going to find out you missed the board confirmation for this too," Devon said after a while. "Marcus has it." Julius. "Ash." Devon. A pause. The soft breathing of the small person between them. "Good," Devon said. And then, very quietly, unmistakably, "Good." Julius pressed his lips to the side of Devon's head, stayed there, felt the warmth of him, the specific and irreplaceable presence of him, the 3 years and the everything and the here and now which contained all of it. "Hey," Devon said softly. "Yeah. We did it. We did," Julius said. "All 3 of us." The sun came through the good windows of the room and lay golden on the floor. And in the chair where Julius had sat all night, his coat was folded over the arm. And on the table beside the bed, 2 cups of cold coffee had been entirely forgotten. And in the corridor beyond the door, the hospital went about the profound ordinary business of lives beginning and continuing. And in the room itself, there was for a while only the quiet of 3 people who were exactly where they were supposed to be. This was the whole story. This was also the beginning. If you made it to the end, you're my kind of person. Leave a subscribe, comment down your favorite part of the story, and if you want early access to videos, exclusive content, or just want to support the channel, make sure to join our Patreon. Link is in the description. Even 1 member genuinely means the world to me. See you in the next one.